Bill, I've told you before, some of the things that I like about your blog is that it doesn't feel too it's in the guise of self-improvement and self-help, but it doesn't feel like it.
Well, thank you. I don't want to make it too hypey.
Yeah.
I'm not trying to sell anything on the blog. I'm just trying to share what I'm learning. So thank you for those kind words.
Yeah, because I want to better myself, but I also don't want to feel like I'm when you go into a bookstore and you go immediately to the self-help book, and it almost feels as though that department is like there's something for everyone in there, but it all feels a little bit too hokey.
Yeah.
This does not.
Yeah, there's a lot of hype in the self-help.
Yeah,
field.
exactly.
A lot of marketing.
And some of the things that you talk about here, you talk about ways that you can, things you can do immediately. And then, it's just like goals. You can have things that you do immediately, and then you have things that you do a little bit further out, and then you have long-term things. And that makes it really something that people can swallow, I think.
Yeah. Well, thank you.
You're welcome. Well, thank you for being here today. So what are we doing today?
Well, today we're going to review, first of all, review where we've been the last couple of conversations over the last few months, and then dive into the next topic. The theme of this series, this conversations, is making 2019 your best year ever. And, we started off talking about the fact that, no one starts off a year charting a course for mediocrity. Nobody gets up on New Year's Day and says, I think I want to gain 10 or 15 pounds this year.
Nope.
I just want to be average in my work and my relationships, with my spouse and my kids. Nobody charts a course for
Nobody
that.
strives for a C either,
No, I mean, but yet oftentimes that's what happens, right? We often settle for less. But I think at the end of the day, we all want to grow. We want to develop. And so, that you mentioned about the self-help. I mean, the personal development industry is a multi-billion-dollar industry, right? And so, but we started off talking about what exactly is personal growth. We use these terms all the time, and I become a stickler for language. But what does it really mean? How do we know if we're growing? And in the last section, I mentioned three sort of qualities or three terms that could be used as a litmus test to tell whether you're growing or not. And the first one is bad habits dropped, right? Wrong priorities changed, and new ways of thinking embraced. So if you could look at yourself, compare yourself from a year ago and your habits, right? The things that you do consistently, your priorities, the things you attach importance to, and your ways of thinking, your perspectives on things. If those are gaining, then chances are you're growing. And I thought that after a lot of research, I felt that was a really good way of assessing growth. Right?
Is there a certain, I just want to talk about demographics here. Is there like maybe you get to be a certain age, 30, 35 and older, and people seem a little bit more, I guess, where they're okay with change. They'd like to see that growth. And you have kind of that younger generation that goes, well, there's nothing wrong with me. This is just who I am. And you get into a little bit older and you say, no, you know what? I want to be a better person.
Yeah.
Do you see anything with demographics? I mean, does someone hit a certain age and go, all right, now it's time to make myself my personal best?
Well, I think it tends to be more as they approach midlife crisis. I know in my own life, it's when I turned 40, which I don't know what midlife is. I mean, I really don't. And I don't really think I don't know how relevant that is, but I think when people reach a certain stage of their life, when the future maybe looks a little shorter than the past to them, that's when oftentimes that leverage in our lives that compels people to think more deeply about growth, about development, we talked about asking that question, am I the same person as I was last year? We talked about the myth of experience, how oftentimes people confuse experience with growth. Just because you have 10 years experience, oftentimes that could be 10 one-year experiences repeated over and over, right?
Or it could be 10 years of mediocrity.
Exactly. Yeah, exactly. Where you're not developing new habits, priorities, and ways of thinking. And then we talked about goals. Goals are the language of self-improvement, right? You go to a self-help book section in the bookstore, you go to a motivational speech, you're always going to hear about goals.
Yeah.
And there's truth to that. Goals are there's a lot of research that back up that goals are very good at harnessing change and growth. The problem that I found in my experience, I find very few people, even leaders, successful people, who make it a habit of and a consistent practice of setting written goals.
Okay.
Which caused me to ask, well, where's the disconnect then? I mean, why doesn't that happen? Why aren't more people setting goals? And I found through research in some of the latest thought leaders in the self-development movement that there are really three things that need to happen first that are more foundational. And we introduced these a couple months ago. One is identity to change, a discipline to start, and the courage to stop. Right, an identity to change, a discipline to start, and the courage to stop. And last time we unpacked identity.
Yeah.
You know? And the whole idea behind identity is before you get to what you want to do, start with who you want to become as a person. In this case, in 2019, who do you want to be as a parent, as a spouse, as a friend, as a leader? You know, some of the examples from our leadership development that we do at work, with leaders express things like, I want to be a leader who shows genuine appreciation, who brings my best every day.
Yeah.
I want to be a leader who's not afraid to confront in a positive and productive way, or I want to be a leader who appreciates and seeks out candid feedback. Those are great identity goals, right? But I found that if you start with who, the what becomes much easier, right? But oftentimes we have this, our distorted identity can cause us to sabotage who we want to become. You know, how often do you hear people say, "Oh, I'm no good with names," or "I'm no good with finances," "I'm no good with relationships," and those things just they quash your sense of identity.
And that's that starts early. You know, you can hear young kids saying things like, "Well, I'm not good at math."
Yeah.
And if you're hearing that from a 12-year-old, that's pretty upsetting because they're so young. There's so much time to be better at something.
Yes, exactly.
But it becomes a part of who you are when you say those things.
Well, I remember we talked about a fixed versus a growth mindset, and fixed mindset is the belief that talent and ability are fixed. Right? There's only so much to go around. And your growth mindset, people believe that with enough work and effort, I can accomplish anything. Yeah. And a lot of times that's drilled in by parents. Right? They might tell their child, You're just not, sorry, don't try this. You're just not very good at it. And they develop that mindset. Or they can say they can reaffirm kids and compliment kids based on their talent. And that becomes their identity. And you don't want that. Right?
Yeah, because then if you lose it, who are you?
Yeah.
Yeah.
And every challenge, every test, every game, every match becomes a test of your identity. It can be very stressful for fixed mindset people. So we talked about that and how identity, true change starts with identity change. The goal isn't to read a book. The goal is to become a reader. It's not to run a marathon, but to become a runner. The goal is not to lose weight, but to become a fit and healthy person. And you see the significant difference between starting with who and that focusing on that identity first is much deeper, right? Rather than just going to. That's why New Year's resolutions have such a dismal record, right? So we unpacked identity last time, and today we're going to unpack the second step, which is
the courage to stop.
No, the discipline to start.
The discipline to start.
I
really want to figure out how we're stopping here. The discipline to start.
Yes.
Okay.
And that's is my favorite topic because I've utilized this process over the last 20 years of my life with dramatic results. And specifically, the behavior is this: to develop one small discipline or habit per year. And the big idea behind that is that small disciplines done consistently lead to big results over time. Small disciplines consistently done lead to big results. And I say that and I emphasize that because we are a culture that loves massive change. We love going from here to here, right?
Yeah,
we have terms like
The Biggest Loser. I mean,
think about that. A good example,
we love to see this dramatic thing happen very quickly.
Yes. We have terms like the big break, the defining moment, massive change. We even have a term, the latest term is called life hack.
Oh, yeah.
Right? It's kind of like a shortcut to getting a big result. And I'm not saying that those things aren't possible, because they can be, but that's not the norm, right? And when that becomes you fixate on that, you're not going to be. The reality is that success is not one big step in the future. It starts with one small step today.
What's an example of a small discipline that people? Because again, I think we get so fixated on you even mentioned losing weight, but the goal is not to lose weight; it's to be a healthy, fit individual.
Yeah.
But a small discipline would be to go for a walk every day.
Could be go for a walk. Yeah, in my own life, I think back. When I was in my 20s, I just took my fitness. I was an athlete in high school and college, and I just took my health and fitness for granted. In my 20s, I just kind of was working a lot of hours, and I let myself go. And I decided I wanted to get back in shape when I turned 30, which one of those birthdays with a zero in the end, right?
Yeah.
And I started, when I think back about that, because I was listening to a health talk. I forget who the person was, but he talked about how dehydrated we generally are. Most people. I would always get up and just have a cup of coffee right away. And I started by drinking 1 20-ounce glass of water every day. That was it.
Just one.
The idea that you have to hydrate yourself, and how so many people, and lack of hydration can cause a lot of health issues. And that led to another discipline. And within a few years, I was running 5Ks, 10Ks. A few years after that, I ran a marathon. And today, I work out 6 days a week, and I'm healthier than I've ever. I'm in better shape than I was when I was 25.
Wow.
But it didn't happen all at once. It was one small discipline, adding one every year.
Okay.
One of my mentors, a guy named Craig Groeschel, who's a little younger than me, he's about 54 years old, and he was ranked one of the top CEOs of mid-sized companies in America, has one of the top leadership podcasts, written many books. He goes back 20 years. He says, 20 years ago, I decided I wanted to be a more disciplined person. So he says, you know what I did? He said, I started flossing. And I laughed about that. I'm thinking, what does that have to do with discipline? And then he said the same thing. I was, what does that have to do with discipline? He said, because I hated it. I hated flossing. And by flossing consistently, I was telling myself, training my brain that you are a disciplined person. And he said that one small discipline led to another one. That today, he's one of the most successful people I know. Another guy who has a top podcast on leadership and development started making his bed.
That's what I was just going to say. That was it. Yeah.
It seems crazy. I'm almost, when I first read about that, that just seems goofy. Those are such small, they have nothing to do with like your work life or other parts of your life. But that's the power of one small discipline.
The making your bed, that's so interesting to me because I started that a couple years ago. Same philosophy of let's just get it out of the way, make the bed right away. And now I actually, when I was on vacation last year, and I asked my husband to send a picture of the bed that was made with the newspaper there, because proof of made bed, because I felt like that became I know I'm going to have a good day if I start out doing something right away.
Isn't that interesting?
It is interesting.
And I think it says a lot about the way our brains work.
Yeah.
I would have never, years ago, I never would have thought that. I would have thought you had to start something significant. If you want to lose weight, you got to start going to the gym 6 days a week.
Right.
No.
You just have to start, just get to the gym once.
Yes. There's a great story. James Clear was an author, best-selling author, a book on atomic habits, and he talks about a guy he knew who lost like 120 pounds in a year, some crazy amount. But he started out, this guy knew he hated to go to the gym, but he knew he needed to go. So he started going to the gym. And all he did was he went in, changed his clothes. He came out of the gym, he just hung out in the gym. Yeah. For like 20, he didn't do anything. He just sat on the weight machine and stuff. And then he went in and he got his clothes back on. He did that for like 3 weeks before he got comfortable, and then started doing more, got a personal trainer, all those kind of things. But he credits that, starting that small.
Yeah.
with he said, if I would have gone to the gym and just started right away, I probably would have had a bad experience, felt terrible about myself, been sore, and for 3 days and quit. Yeah.
That's the small discipline, though.
Yes, okay. That's the small discipline.
Okay.
And there are so many areas, I think, of my own life where that's been so powerful. things like reading. I always wanted to be a reader. I love to learn. But what's the biggest conflict that people express with reading?
Time.
I don't have time.
Yeah.
So I committed to reading 15 minutes a day. That's it. 15. I mean, we get 15 minutes to check our smartphones,
Right.
to do anything, right? And I said, I'm not going to do any more than that, just 15 minutes. Well, that was 15 or 20 years ago. Today, I read 20 to 25 books a year. But it happened over time. It became 15, became 20, became 30. And then, you basically train yourself. I'm a reader now.
Yeah.
I'm not just someone who reads. And so I think, more recently, this was probably last decade, I got involved with the NMC Foundation, and I began to meet these people in their 70s and 80s who, even though they were older, they were still learning and growing. And I said to myself, I want to be that kind of person. I want to be a lifelong learner. I don't care how old I am. So one of the things I decided to do, and I talked to my wife about it, is we set a discipline, or a commitment, if you call it, to attending. We attend at least one conference in some other part of the country every year. And it could be on a variety of topics. It could be we just got back from one. It was on personal development. It may be on marriage, on spiritual formation. But we make a commitment to it. And a lot of times we'll go to more than one because we enjoy it, but just one. And that discipline has made both of us lifelong learners. And it's also strengthened our marriage. But it started with one small commitment. I think we went to like Grand Rapids for a 1.5 day conference.
Yeah.
And last week, a couple weeks ago, it was in Orlando for 4 days.
Oh, see, that sounds more fun.
Yeah, especially in Marsh in northern Michigan, right? And there's a lot of research to back this up. In 2006, Duke University did a study, and they found that 40% of our daily actions are habit-driven. 40% are almost unconscious habits. They talk about goals. I mentioned that goals are the language of self-improvement, but habits are the compound interest.
Yeah.
You really are, when you think about that and you look at that statistic, if close to half of your daily actions are habit-driven, you are your habits. They say you are what you eat. From a behavioral standpoint, you are your habits.
Wow. So, and habits, in my world, I always feel like habits have gotten such a negative connotation. People talk about bad habits, but habits, if they're good, are good.
Yes. Well, and it's interesting because in the self-development field, the best-selling books of recent years have almost all been on habits. For example, there's a New York Times columnist named Charles Duhigg who wrote a best-selling book called The Power of Habit. And it's a great book. And he uses the term called keystone habits. I love this term. And a keystone habit is defined as a behavior or routine that naturally pulls the rest of your life in line.
Oh, wow.
So here's how you identify a keystone habit. You ask yourself, what is one consistent discipline that I could start that would make the rest of my life easier and more productive? It's one consistent discipline.
That would make the rest of my life easier and more productive.
Yeah.
I would say going to bed at the same time every night.
Great idea. Yeah, great thought. Yeah.
I'm going to get more sleep. That's going to help everything.
And, sleep is another one that's been the research on sleep in recent years, especially because of the digital age and the impact of smartphones, is huge. As a nation, we are getting worse at sleep, and it's killing us.
Okay.
So good habit.
Oh, good. All right.
I know for me, exercise is one of my keystone habits. If I get to the gym, it creates a ripple effect in other areas of my life. Not only do I get the benefits of working out, but I focus better, when I'm working out. I tend to eat better when I'm working out consistently. I sleep better at night, and I have more energy. But notice that I didn't build better habits, for my focus, my nutrition, my sleep, or my energy. I just focused on that one keystone habit, and it pulled the rest of my life in line, right?
Okay.
So I guess what Duhigg is saying in his book is not all disciplines are created equal. Some have more impact than others.
Right.
And so when you're developing that discipline to start, think of the ones that have the greatest potential to pull the rest of your life in line.
So that, getting back to the discipline to start with, a small discipline or habit, one small discipline or habit a year. And, in my mind, in my cynical mind, I say, wait a second, that's one a year. So for those of us who are now, I just turned 40 and I'm going, so in 10 years, I might have 10 good habits. But you're saying, no, if this discipline is something that is a keystone habit, it's going to bring everything else in line.
Yes, it will.
Ah.
And I think the key is, and I don't want to be legalistic about it, because you may develop more than one discipline, but the key is to start small. I think that's the real focus. What happens with most people is they want to go for the quantum leap, and that hardly ever works. Just all you have to do is look at the research on diets and all that kind of stuff. The key is to start small, and what will happen is like with the flossing and making your bed. After a period of time of training yourself that I'm a disciplined person, then moving into other habits, particularly keystone habits, becomes easier. But like I said, not all habits are created equal, and the ones that have the biggest impact in your life, you could have just a few key habits that could radically change your life, radically. And I think that's the key to this whole idea of a discipline to start.
Well, then you have to start.
Then you have to start, yes.
So you can make all the plans in the world, but you're the one that has to pull out the floss and do it.
Yes. And there's actually research. James Clear talks about that in his book Atomic Habits, which is a great read. He talks about setting up your environment. Like if you want to get up and exercise in the morning, lay out your gym clothes the night before right by your bed. I suppose if you want to floss, put the floss like right in front of your sink. And there's all kinds of studies that done on by behavioralists that look at, like, if you buy smaller plates, if you want to lose weight and you use smaller plates, you will eat less. It's amazing. I mean, I guess it's not amazing. I guess that's just the way we're wired. But I mean,
yeah, that's just it's kind of your brain realizing that, okay, we're out of food now. It's a smaller plate.
And there's a lot of things you can do to set yourself up for success. That's
interesting. Today, and this is by design because I knew you were going to be here and I needed that little push. I'm going back to the gym and starting my fitness program again. And I literally wore half of my gym clothes today.
Nice.
Because I knew if I wear half of my gym clothes, I'm going to go.
Yes. Yes. And why not make it easier on yourself, to leverage your ability. And then you get to the gym, you feel good. And the more that you do that and the more you experience the endorphins, the brain endorphins and the positive benefits from that, then the more you're going to want to go. And then it becomes, I know for me, my wife makes me take a day off of working out because you really need to take a rest day.
Yeah.
I love to work out. So she's like, she makes me, I have to take a rest day. I have to force myself because it's become such a part of who I am.
Now, if people are listening, what would so after unpacking, these kind of three keys rather to making 2019 your best year ever for a discipline to start, would it be, okay, think about it tonight. What is it going to be? What's the thing that you're going to change about this year? And if they've already done that, then, it's a refresher at this point. But what's the small habit that you can do that really will impact the rest of your life?
And it doesn't have to be like January. I mean, it's almost April now. It could be the beginning of a month. It could be, many companies are on fiscal years. You don't have to think about, I have to wait till January.
No.
Not at all.
Yeah.
Today, a fresh start starts tomorrow.
Yeah. And one thing that you can do, that you can start with, that you can do every day, how long does doing the same action, let's say, for example, I've heard this before, that if you do something every day for something like 21 days, is there any truth to that?
I haven't been able to find any consensus on that. There are some who say it takes 21 days. Others say as long as, it could take 3 days, it could take until it becomes ingrained in your mind. I think, realistically, I think the 21 days to 30 days is probably a good number. It's going to vary, but the research on that is there's a lot of different opinions on that. I think for some people, consistency means a week. Some people it means
Right.
6 weeks.
Well, if you want to follow along with this blog, like I said, this is such. It's so refreshing because it's something that is applicable to your day-to-day. It's local. Bill Marsh Jr., who is writing this blog, you go to billmarshjr.com or you just Google Making You Matter, which is easy to do. And you can follow along and you can actually create these lasting, purposeful habits that really do have an impact on your life. And you don't feel hokey about it.
No.
Yeah, that's what I like. I mean, I love this idea of meditation, but as soon as I sit down and I try, everyone tells me, "Oh, you have to meditate." I'm like, "No, I don't, it's not my thing." And it's interesting because this is like, "Oh, this is advice, and these are things that you can follow along, and it will make a difference."
Yes, it'll make a big difference.
It will.
But you got to start small.
Okay. Starting small, like flossing. I love that. Bill Marsh, thank you so much for joining us once again, and we'll see you next month. And again, if you've missed any of these, we have all of these on our podcast. So just go to crystalfrost.com. You can look under podcast. We see all of the Bill Marsh Jr. Making You Matter podcasts. If you'd rather see it on video, we also have all of these conversations on our vlog, and you can find us on Facebook and again, crystalfrost.com. Thank you so much.
Thank you.